Okay, so the conversation today is about the what appears to be a scarcity of several essential aspects of basic life in Nigeria at the moment, including not only fuel but also cash. Um, and I mean, before we dive into the conversation deeply, I suppose it's good for people who might not know very much about what's happening for us to establish a bit of the context. So, I mean, just in terms of a timeline, the government announced sometime in October last year, amidst the presidential election, that they were going to introduce some new notes um, and phase out some of the old denominations of the Naira, the Nigerian currency. So we were told that the 1,000 Naira note, the 500 Naira note, the 200 Naira note will be phased out of circulation, at least the old versions would, and that we would get new versions of these notes, and that all of this was supposed to happen by the end of January this year. Fast forward to the end of January this year, and actually very few of the new notes had come out in circulation. So people started to worry, like, hey, is this still going to happen? Um, what's going to happen to all the old notes that we had in our hands? And how is this all going to impact the election? So then the government came out again saying that, look, the deadline had been extended, but they still were going to stick with this policy and wanted people to submit all of their old notes and start transacting in the new notes, which were then starting to be released. So you would see them around, but I think the vast kind of majority of the money that was in circulation was still the old notes. Now, about last week, we came to the second deadline, February 10th, that the government had introduced after it extended the first deadline. And still, I mean, a majority of people really didn't have the new notes, and the old notes were increasingly not being accepted, and the government was even saying that, the bank should not accept the old notes, etc., etc. So now we're in a moment when um, a lot of the old notes have been withdrawn from circulation. Most people can't actually access money. And very few of the new notes have been put back into circulation. So there's actually literally a shortage of cash, and you have long lines at ATMs. Riots have even kicked off in some cities in parts of the country. And you have now some members of the ruling party, including, I mean, most notably the governor of Kaduna, Rufai, saying that people in his state and in other allied states should continue to spend the old notes, while the federal government is saying that the old notes are no longer a legal tender, with the exception of the 200 Naira note. So it looks like not only an economic and social crisis, but a political crisis. And in addition to this, it looks like this might have a quite severe impact on the election coming up next weekend. So this is the kind of context, I think, in terms of where we are at the moment. So how would you guys respond to this? I mean, how are you making sense of what's happening? And yeah, what impact do you think this might have on A, the APC's chances in the election, um, and B, the possibility of the election actually holding itself? So, in fact, let me try to phrase that question a little more crisply. Do you believe in the kind of theory that El Rufai is proposing, that this whole currency redesign process has been instigated by enemies of Tinubu, the APC candidate, in this election, first of all? So do you buy that sort of narrative, which, I mean, appears to be the mainstream narrative? And if so, why? I mean, what the hell is happening? And if not, why? I mean, why otherwise has this artificial shortage of currency been introduced? So yeah, who wants to take a stab? Emeka, you seem to be raising up your hand. Do you want to give it a shot?
How would you know that? Okay. Um, yeah, I mean, for a minute there, I thought when you introduced Rufai to, I mean, governor of Kaduna State into the fray, mean, you said most notably. I thought you were going to say most notoriously. I mean,
Mm,
uh, El Rufai. Uh, I think that you. Um, so let me talk back a bit. So it's of course it's a financial problem. It's also a bit of a social problem. You know,
yeah.
so it's a socio-economic problem. But I mean, is it a political problem?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Probably yes. But did it have to be a political problem? I'd say no. And this is where uh, that sore thumb, sticks out. And El Rufai being that sore thumb in my own estimation.
Yeah.
Um, but to answer your question, so that I don't take too much time, I don't believe anything El Rufai says. You
Mm.
know, if El Rufai says it's morning, I'll need to cross-check. Um,
Yeah.
I in my mind, Erufai is a liar,
Right.
and this is what his antecedents, show. Um, he does these things, in the lead up to election. You know, I remember that in 2015, Erufai, in the lead up to that election, when Goodluck Jonathan was president, Erufai came out and told Nigerians who cared to listen to him that he was number 3 on a hitman list,
Mm.
on GEG's hitman list. Today he's come out to say that uh, the Naira redesign policy was aimed at the candidate of his party.
Yeah.
You know, I struggle to see how this is true. You, you know,
Mm.
he goes further to say that there are some elements, who have taken it upon themselves to see that Bola Tinubu fails, you know.
Mm.
But being true to himself, he has, in a way that he likes to heat up the polity, he hasn't mentioned any names, So I'd
Right.
not even bother myself, with that. So as far as
Mm.
I'm concerned, he's lying. What he hopes to gain is another, topic for
Mm-hmm.
discussion. We might get there. But as things stand now, I'd say that Eric Fire is really panicked, as most of them in the ruling party are.
Mm.
Um, they're jitters, within that party, and that there's a general feeling, or they like to sell the narrative that the president isn't behind their own presidential candidate.
Right.
So that's why they have dragged politics into what is supposed to be um, just basically a social economic, problem, and then um, it can be anybody's guess why they are deciding, to do that.
Mm.
We might get in. As for what it means for the election itself,
Mm.
beyond the fact that this scarcity can, yeah, somewhat derail the election, in the sense that people, you know, candidates across all parties now might struggle to be able to mobilize not their base, but party agents. People need cash to move from where they live to polling units where they're supposed to work. So that's going to be a problem. I the way I see it. But if you have planned for elections long before now, um, you should have made arrangements for how your party agents should get polling units where they have been designated. But what complicates this problem today is, of course, the scarcity of fuel, which we're
Right.
talking about earlier. So that's where it gets a bit tricky. So what one would expect is that there will be a lot of hiccups in terms of logistics, both on the part of INEC, you know, the body that sees to elections, and on the part of parties, with regards to their agents, and maybe even the press who would usually monitor these elections. So that's where I envisage that we would run into, problems. How big these problems might turn out to be would be left to be seen. So I mean, I'd leave it there for now and see if OAG has.
Yeah, my own standpoint is that, these are our ruling elites. They have shown at times that they can be intra-elite, various spheres of influence, Some of it might be over-exaggerated or exaggerated, and some might have some content of truth in it. Because I'm imagining that someone like who would expect a seamless election season where nothing will be in the way of the logistics of his stroll in quotes into power, and then it's happening that at this point in time we are having currency change that will affect my own Emilocon, that's my own turn. You're having fuel scarcity, which the bourgeoisie and all these elites are in control of. He would probably know people that can make sure that these things flow. And then why is it that at my own time or my own turn or my Emilocon turn, why is it that these problems are surfacing? At best, if you needed to do them economically or in truth, you should have just, staved it up a bit until after the elections, and then we can be dealing with that, So some element of that feeling, wrong or right, or maybe he misdiagnosed, will carry that, why is it at my own point? Why is it at my own time that you guys? So if you listen to, that's what goes back to some of his speeches that he gave at, some of these different, what this talk parade
rally.
or campaign, rallies. Why they can go and hide the Naira, they can go and make sure that there's no fuel, but we will vote. But it's the same part. Yeah, that's what Tinubu was saying, but it's the same part. So the contradiction is that it's the same APC that is in power now. So it shows, and this is a teachable moment for everybody, that we all have to be class conscious. We have to understand the dynamics of class. And Emeka has said that, that, okay, the left, or in any of our podcasts that we've been recording, that the left have decided to just be idle bystanders. But this, again, is a teachable moment. It's a moment for the left to point these things out to the people that are willing to see, listen, and learn that the elites are very, very, acrobatic. They can do whatever it is that they want to do. And inside, occasionally, because of the contradictions of their own system, they will at times tug at power and they will fight themselves. These are points that we can use to teach people. But because there's no unified left, there's no organized left, it's just, all these opportunities just pass us by, and we just miss them. And it's unfortunate. Again, it'll put untold hardship on the people. First, let's not forget that when cash was even flowing, we don't already poor already in multi-dimensional poverty. And let's not forget that our economy is largely informal. People like Mr. GK Komolafe of F1, will tell you that people during that SARS time and then, lockdown time, that people couldn't get out. The country was was getting close to like real boiling points, and testing the temperature of people in the streets. He said that, look, if this thing wasn't eased off at the point was, like there have been worse consequences, and then again, a government that couldn't ensure that palliatives get to the people, and all the necessary social services. She ain't going to ensure, say, any policy go quickly percolate down through the people. So it's a failure of like all these points and all these junctions. It's a failure. It's highlighting the failure of the ruling class in all dimensions. And these are teachable. Like, it's a moment for us to point out and teach people that, look, these people, when it comes to food, when it comes to social services, when it comes to education, when it comes to good road, when it comes to anything that will make your life better, they are not and can't give you because it is antagonistic to their own existence. But they can quickly move to create policies, that will be aimed at tugging at themselves when it comes to the drag or push for power. These are those points that I feel, like I'm taking a slightly different approach from Emeka's own, but I just like to have that analytical, standpoint. And we know El Rufai is just a bullshitter. Like, he says bullshit, exaggerated, and then he has also used his mouth to cause violence in different countries. So they shouldn't take him too seriously, but we should look at, like the possibility of that, tug for power even inside of the APC itself. The same way it's happening inside of the PDP with Wike and them forming their own little G5 and all these things, So it's just the moment to step back and see that these guys will fight, they will push and pull themselves, But when it's time to gather and mess the people up, they are there 100%, So it will mess elections up in terms of logistics. Rightly, as Emeka has said, it's going to mess it up seriously because people are complaining, no cash. It's an informal economy. Nobody has money to do stuff except, maybe, some people are not even taking transfers. They're not. So and rightly, we've been seeing the riots. So what do you want people to do? It's going to turn into a situation where, things flare up, and it's a country that is that weak, that is already, cracking fault lines of, ethnic tensions, economic tension, political. Like, who knows where this thing will, explode and turn into, whereby, some people are saying interim government. Who knows? Like, we don't have a crystal ball. We can just take the analysis and look at, and give different dimensions, and explanations to how it goes. So that would be my own contribution to the discourse, But I largely believe that Rufai is just, saying what he wants to say in his usual fashion.
That's an interesting point of view, and I think we should come back to the question of the effects of this policy on the public, and then secondly, how the left should respond, which I think you already started alluding to. But before then, I'm a bit confused about how this is playing out at the elite level, and I would be interested in you guys' perspectives and how you might shed light on the elite politics, which you were even diving into as well, OAG, and Emeka certainly was expressing a perspective on, which is this question of the intra-party squabble within the APC. So that was El Rufai's kind of statement, which Emeka was introducing, and also this is the same thing that Tinubu was alluding to on the campaign trail, as OAG was talking about, which is that a segment of the APC around the Tinubu campaign is claiming that the currency redesign policy has been instigated by some unnamed individuals around President Buhari and perhaps President Buhari himself in order to scuttle or sabotage Tinubu's ambition. That seems strange to me for a couple of reasons, including what OAG was just saying. One is that obviously Tinubu can get money if he wants it, right? As in, he has money. I think we can safely assume that Tinubu has a lot of old Naira, right? And his proximity to power means that he can get new Naira if he wants. I mean, am I tripping here? Like, can't Tinubu call bank managers in X banks that he has helped construct through his own business dealings and get new currency if he wants? So, and then, the same is true, I think, of the other major candidates, at least Atiku. So, I mean, in what way does this really affect him? I guess they're claiming that the logic of that framing by El Rufai and Tinubu is that not only that primarily this embarrasses the APC, right? And then that means that it will turn voters off against Tinubu. But I mean, are we then saying that are they then claiming, or are they then expecting us to believe that that the kind of cabal around Buhari or Buhari himself, whatever the case might be, is has no interest in the APC continuing to be in power? Like, they have nothing to lose if their opponents enter into office? and are looking through their trash, and kind of able to identify what scams they were running from the Astos Villa. So I'm just a bit confused as to um, whether or not there is a real conflict going on within the APC, or whether this is rather a kind of distraction from the fact that the opposition was gaining a lot of ground, and seemed to actually be at the verge of tipping the scales just a few weeks ago. So, I mean, yeah, help me make sense of this, Oiji or Emeka, whoever feels most inclined to jump in. But I'm just still confused at this level of what seems to be inter-elite squabble, if that's what's really happening. And then the other second point I'll quickly say, that makes this even more bizarre to me, is that both Atiku and Obi, the other main candidates, seem to be perfectly fine with the currency redesign, as unpopular as it is. So it means that the opposition candidates seem to be backing the president's very unpopular policy, and the ruling party candidate seems to be opposing it. So it just appears like the lines are really blurry, and nothing anyone is saying, Tinubu, Atiku, Obi, or El Rufai, really makes sense to me at the moment in terms of where the battle lines really are drawn. So how are you guys kind of explaining this situation to yourselves, in concrete terms?
Oh, that's a loaded one, Said.
As usual, no? No be so.
Uh, and you know, I don't know. It's I mean, what we're trying to do here is make sense of something. Some of these developments. Where personally, my default mode would be to say that what, that one concerned them, and then channel my own energies to some things that are more useful or productive. But for the sake of conversation, um, it's a funny situation, that, I mean, and I've had a number of people commentate, analysts, if you like, or people who like to talk about politics, say that this election we might need to study it. People often say that it resembles the '79 election, but I mean, be that as it may, I mean, to take a stab at the question that you just posed, I think that it's a mix of plenty things.
Mm.
And then when you talk about inter-party rivalry or problems within the party, this will be true for both APC and PDP,
True.
to varying degrees, so there's the war between Atiku and Wike, and the dimensions are somewhat different because, I mean, these guys aren't in power, right? But there's a bit of power play. But to stick with, the one that will concern Nigerians mostly, in talking about, this scarcity of cash, and the policy of Naira redesign, and how it's might be causing a feud between different factions within the ruling party.
Mm.
It might just be a stretch, but I mean, for me, I think that what's playing out here is that maybe because this is the first time we're actually witnessing something that looks like a viable third force in the candidacy of the political permutations, aren't what they had figured that it would be.
Mm-hmm.
And because they were in power, and they hadn't really paid attention to this, it hit them like lightning, like a bolt, from nowhere pretty late. And then what was overconfidence, earlier on, then turned into panic. I'll have us remember that I can't remember exactly when, but sometime back, there were pictures that surfaced on the internet where 2 bullion vans, of course, what we expect, cash rolled into Tinubu's body loan residence. I don't know. I've never worked in bank. I don't know how much cash 1 billion bank can hold, but I'd expect that it would run into hundreds of.
Yes.
And then who knows what it was used for at the time? Because at the time this happened, Tinubu wasn't running for any electoral position or office. One would imagine that he used it to defeat some local elections in Lagos. Anyways, what I think has played out here is that Tinubu, because of the overconfidence, because everybody knows that elections in Nigeria is cash-based. That they bribe, you need money to which is not to say that he doesn't have access to new notes.
Sure.
But because the stakes are higher, they don't realize now, say the money with them in stockpile fit no do, and then you can get these feelers from how much they use to buy their candidacy within their, what you call them, primaries, which is where most of this problem started from. All right. People who lost out felt disenfranchised, and then so if you try for those who like to pay attention to the figure, Rufai, it tells you that these people are non-state actors. People who don't even have elected positions within the government, but how the president. Yeah. So it's almost like some people want to distance the president they want to distance the party itself from Aso Rock, the villa, and the president. Almost as if they're accepting that the past 8 years, has been uneventful, and that they don't have much to run on, off the back of what the president has done. So it's almost like still the guy has been there for the last 8 years, just largesse and hasn't really put in any work, So there's not much that they can run on.
Yeah, he's just been sitting down in a crisis, picking his teeth like that, like the picture in that meme, right?
Like the picture. Yeah. So basically, what has largely, in my own books, been, and this is not new to anybody who's lived in Nigeria, who is even in Nigeria, the incompetence, the ineptitude of the central bank policy is something that offered people like Rufai and Bola Tinubu of this world a lifeline to kind of spin the narrative.
Right.
And say, okay, you know what, we're not part of this. So if you hear Rufai out, for those who care to listen to him sometime, he says, this is not an APC policy. This is, and then, okay, of course, the next best thing to do is to try and, act like you're behind the masses who, of course, are bearing the actual brunt of this, ill-conceived CBN policy. So it's something that they're cashing in on.
Yes, no pun intended. So, and sorry to interrupt you there, but that seems to me to be precisely the irony of all of this. Is that, and this is where I want OAG to come in, is that if this is really intra-elite squabbling within the ruling party, like if this is really something designed by people around Buhari and Buhari himself, perhaps, to weaken Tinubu, then there are two very weird ironies that raises. One is that it actually has had the opposite effect in a lot of parts of the country, because people are like, oh, Tinubu, Nigerians, moralistic Nigerians, or people who have a sort of some ethnic sympathy which exists, are saying, "Oh, this Tinubu that helped give Buhari a platform to succeed after he failed three times before, is now being unjustly victimized by these people, right? Particularly voters in the Southwest and parts of the North are saying like, this is kind of unfair. And, they're having sympathy for a guy who a few months ago they were looking at as just another one of the APC, clowns. So the policy is clearly failing. I mean, the sort of the strategy is clearly failing if it's really designed to weaken Tinubu. I mean, in some parts of the country, and even in some senses is counterproductive because it seems to be producing the opposite effect. I mean, so is it just incompetence on the part of the cabal? And the second irony is that it then seems like the cabal, quote unquote, they've now become the guardians of democracy, right? Because why would they're weakening Tinubu on behalf of the other elite, in order to trigger a transition of power and, actually have us have a meaningful election? So that seems antithetical to the notion of a hidden, quote unquote, northern cabal, that's sort of pulling some puppet strings behind Buhari. So this all seems quite confusing to me. And, it seems like, pardon me, it seems like the notion of inter-elite squabbling is playing quite an important role in helping remobilize sympathy for the Tinubu candidacy. So how would you respond to this, OAGS, based on the perspective you were laying out earlier that, this does point to some measure of a crisis within APC?
Yeah. So the thing that I see is that these people, they might have power, but they are not all smart. They are not all knowing. And of course, the permutations and combinations of what thing go happen when they do something, they might not know it all.
Sure.
They clearly don't know. Nobody knows it all. So, and if you do something, the other party, or if like one faction or one power base does something, then what do? You regroup and go and look for a way to spin the thing to your own advantage, because that tribal thing has always been an ace card, a joker card for Tinubu. Let's not forget that a lot of Yoruba artists came out even before everything, came to this point. They were already riding and finding that Yoruba flame that yes, it's Yoruba's done, Yoruba
Definitely.
this, Yoruba that, So that is always one thing to use. And unfortunately, the level we're at in Nigeria, it's unfortunate that we are still not past ethnic politics. It's still very, very ingrained.
It's a part of the equation for sure.
It's very, it's a part of the equation. So if one part of the ruling class comes up with a policy, and one would believe that this ruling class or this elites are supposed to be a monolith, but it is helpful to understand that there are times when the push for power or the pull for power becomes tough, and these people fight amongst themselves. They know how to sort their issues. They know. So when they do all these things, it is he who is at the executing, arm at this point in time that has the final say. Because look at it, just yesterday or the day before yesterday, they said, CBN said, or someone, I think Buhari said they should allow 200 naira or something.
Yes,
and then some people are saying that they should, some governors are saying people should take 500, 1,000. Like, you see that, is it not the same? You're supposed to be the same party, but what's up with all the whole tug of war that's inside? So how the effects happen and how it is being spun by intra-elite, like during this intra-elite troubles is left for us to see. But what we are experiencing now is that parts of the elites that can tug at ethnic sentiments, they will do that for their advantage. If they can tug at mobilizing thugs, they will do that. That's the thing, nothing is off the table for these guys. That's one thing, that I want you to know, because it is yeah, whoever wins, winner takes all, and then we can apologize by sharing oil blocks later, and then
Yes.
my daughter will marry your daughter,
Uh,
and that's all, that kind of thing. So it's really not something that is surprising to me.
yeah.
Because they are crude. These people, they are crude. They are still primitive accumulators. They are not sophisticated in their thinking. What we even have is a pseudo elite. They are not sophisticated in thinking. They are not, so it's you see when lions are fighting over a like animal that they are yet to kill, and then the animal escapes. So that's like, so that's the thing. So the animal is just there waiting to die, but one lion is tugging at the other lion or trying to stop the other lion, and the gazelle just gets up and runs away. We've seen that on documentaries a lot of times. So that's what you're saying. They might end up losing with all these games that they are playing, and they should be. I don't know. I don't want to say they should be wary of that, but well, it's to the advantage of the people. And again, it's a teachable moment that these people do fight amongst themselves at times, because Tinubu will expect, I'll repeat it, Tinubu will expect this election cycle and this period to be smooth. If they were a monolith, they will expect the thing to be smooth. No wahala, no fuel, anything. Even if you want to do it, let it be after I've entered. Why is it now?
Yeah.
That's his own problem.
Yeah.
I think
so. That's the only thing. That's the crux of the matter for him. That's why now.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Can I chip in? Yeah, but I think that I think that we might be running ahead of ourselves. If we flow with the general narrative that that these guys are fighting amongst themselves. I don't really think they are fighting amongst themselves in any real sense of it. Why do I say that? It's politics. It's a time. It's an election. We'll have an election in a week's time, right? There have been a lot of polls that have come out. There's the ANAP one, there's the STAIRS one. I think there's the SPM intelligence which came out yesterday. There's this one for Quacko. And I think it's these polls it's almost like a rude awakening for members of the ruling party. Okay. Basically, what I figure that is at play here isn't so much about elite politics. Of course, how this seeming rancor between perceived factions will be interpreted by the electorate would be ethnic, for lack of tools for class analysis. But
yes, and everybody knows that. I mean, the elite know that. The cabal knows that. So there's any cabal. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I really agree with you. I just want to underline what you're saying, because OAG was trying to suggest that they don't have a crystal ball, which they don't, but they also know that their policies are interpreted in ethnic terms. So, because we know that, I know we're smart.
This is why.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Because after all, Rufai is not a Yoruba man. Of course, he's not a Southwesterner. He's a Northerner, right? But he's in bed with Tinubu's camp. The same for Ganduje. The same for the governor of Zamfara, right? This is enlightened elite interest, if you ask me, rather than the ethnic. So that's the thing. It's how you and I, the electorate interprets this that they are banking on. It's not, they know what they are doing, of course. So basically, what it seems like they're doing is that they're throwing their principal under the bus. That's what it seems like, but it's not actually what's happening. That's not what's happening. I spent a lot of time yesterday watching TV, which I don't do. I don't know, for whatever reason. But I followed an interview with the Minister of Information, Lai Mohammed. I'd advise any of you to go and look for that interview. I think it was on TVC. And then
Tinubu's station.
Continue. Yeah, and the funny thing is that I don't rate Lai Mohammed one bit. But this seemed to me like one of his most measured, media outings, where he was very circumspect about the way he answered the questions. But I think what was more instructive for me was the guys who were calling into the program, and then the kind of sentiments, that you could deduce from their own calls. And the large chunk of that, people who called in the program, as you'd expect, were Southwesterners. And they kind of actually, even people who I think there was a former House of Assembly member who called into the program, Lagos State House of Assembly member, who actually is buying into all of this, And then, so, I mean, one side says it might be an advantage, to the BAT campaign, Tinubu campaign. It's, you can't throw that away, because it kind of shows up his base. What it means is that if there are people who take it for granted that Tinubu would win Lagos, for instance, or the Southwest, anyways, before now, so and they wouldn't have gone out to vote. Now they'll go out to vote, because they think, okay, they want cheat. They want Emilio Con. It's my turn, So they want to cheat us out of, And then for people like El Rufai, of course, Buhari's time has ended. The future is with bats, or so it seems, And they want to be in his good books. They want to go. They want to be able to say after the election that, oh, we stood for you, by the time when you were running for election. So you would start, because, I mean, anybody who knows El-Rufai knows that he has the ambitions of becoming the president of Nigeria. And then in 8 years' time, it will also be time for them or the Northerners to produce the next president of Nigeria. And he wants to be in the forefront of that race. So it's like I said, it's enlightening self-interest. He also wants to be able to pick the governor of Kaduna State, the next governor of Kaduna State, which is the same thing Wike wants to do on the PDP side. And it's all, it's our turn, it's not our turn at that level. But meanwhile, the power plays for the spoils of war. So that's how I see it.
OG, you want to come?
So, definitely. So when I say these people are fighting, it doesn't mean that they are not still a class or an entity or whatever they do. They say that they tug at themselves, don't mean say they get fundamental disagreement. Let's not miss that. Like everybody, like you said, spoils of war. Now still generals go share land after. Now them go share gold when they don't kill people. Now them go talk, okay, now my terrain be this. You go still favor the people will be the general, will be the commanding army. At the end of the day, the people will go die with, where they with burnt houses, pillaged, land and all that, So these people can do like whatever it is that happens amongst them. It's just instructive, or it's just a pointer to us that look, they fight at times, but it's not for the benefit of the people. That's the point that I was making. It's not for our benefit at all. Whatever they do, if you put Tinubu at a disadvantage, Tinubu that seems to be a sinking man will go back to his drawing board and say we can talk at ethnic sentiments here to show our base up. If it's another person, like maybe GJ at the point in time, they don't want minorities to be there. Sometimes when you reach there, you do something with favor us. Do something with it can be like. So these people will talk at anything. Like they will talk at ethnic sentiments, religious sentiments, anything, because that fight, that war now is for power. And to a large extent, the masses don't even get say in terms of maybe their own, like the left, let's say, the left now, they don't even get say. We say their own full representative not there. So one talk, say two of them, they fight. It's just, even if na APC, elite, PDP, elite this thing, Labour, still, elite stuff. But however, that LP ticket definitely will have ruffled their feathers and throw a bit of confusion into their camp, So, and then they are prone to making mistakes. If you allow another elite snatch the ballots for their hand, elites can reconfigure at any point in time, throw their fellow elites under the bus, change their mouth when it's time for election, reposition themselves for the future. All the points that Maker has made, all these things, they are there, there's no there might be that superficial disagreement. That's the thing. There might be that superficial agreement, but there's nothing fundamentally different inside of what's they do. That's my own summary. You know, it's my summary. Yeah.
I think what Oji was saying at the end is kind of where I'm at. Like, it may be that I've been overly red pilled. I've been a blue pill. I don't even know which pills I've been. I'm like I say, don't taste this, the hack matrix. But
if you forget which pill be which pill,
I tell you. But I mean, I guess maybe it's the craziness of the election period. But I mean, yes, you can see from my questions that I'm entertaining the possibility that this is all quite a bit more coordinated than it seems, you know? But where am I coming from when I say that? For one, I mean, to me, I think that elections and politics for a lot of these people is kind of a side hustle. Their main hustle is in the market, where they are the titans of the Nigerian economy anyway. I mean, keep in mind that Tinubu has been out of power for like 20 years or something at this point, and he's been fine. You know, he's installed his people everywhere. So winning an election, sure, I'm sure it's very important for him, but his main source of income now is not like his own candidacy anymore. The same with Atiku, who has lost how many times, you know, and is still fine. Tinubu, I mean, even Obi has been out of power for a while, and I mean, primarily he's a businessman, which isn't to say being president wouldn't help them out. I mean, I'm sure it would. You know, you can always be richer and have more status, but I think they don't want to antagonize their friends, each other that much ultimately, you know? So for me, like, and you know, that's quite a distance to start from. But for me, then, you know, that understanding that and realizing that what they certainly don't want to do is, you know, trigger a actual like wave of social like revolt. You know, they want to get people excited, you know, have some people feel hopeful, but they don't want it to reach the level where there is a real social upheaval that's directed in a mass direction. You know, in other words, they're quite aware of their collective ruling class interests, more so than we are as, you know, the working class.
Rufai wouldn't mind.
Abi?
Yeah. Rufai wouldn't mind. That's the person who is.
Oh, you think he wouldn't mind a mass social upheaval?
Yeah, he wouldn't mind, I'm telling you.
I don't know,
but
man.
Sorry, continue. I mean, I just want to let you die.
It's an interesting point, but you know, see, I'm not convinced of that, man. I really feel like El Rufai is their kind of court jester, where they send him out to wave his hands furiously and distract people from what's really happening. You know, he's kind of the Fani Kayode of the North, right?
Yeah, that's a good description.
You know what I mean?
But he was.
He makes okay, maybe he probably was, right? But he makes a lot of noise, you know, so that you look in one direction rather than the other. That's how I kind of.
I agree. I agree.
You know what I mean? So,
I agree. But on this issue, you wouldn't mind. I'll be honest with you.
Well, it may be, but I mean, so I think that El Rufai's interests are better protected under a Obi administration, Atiku administration, than it would be under conditions of revolution or even military. I mean, and so that's where maybe I've gone further than, you know, maybe I've swallowed more doses of the red pill than others here, but I just feel like these guys are much more coherent behind the scenes, and sometimes the behind comes up front when you see their weddings or their birthday celebrations or whatever, where it's all the same guys. You know, I feel, because why I'm saying that is, of course, they're still going to have their representatives in the House. They're still going to have the governorship. They're still going to have like substantial influence in industry, all of which needs to be protected, and a social revolution would wreck. So for me, again, this is partially a sideshow, because they've managed to stick to elections to the extent that very little changes, or if there's even a change in terms of what party, the arrangement of letters, fundamentally the economic interests don't change. So all the candidates this time agree in removing subsidy, liberalizing currency, continue privatizations, right? It's just a question of who buys it first before selling it to the other. So from that standpoint, I'm like, that's why when OAG says like on the surface it's a conflict, but underneath it's more coordinated. I'm really inclined to believe that. And even the kind of conflict that is being, the kind of conflict that El Rufai is suggesting is happening in the ruling party. I have a slightly different read on it, respectfully to the gentleman governor. I think that it also appears to me like the whole thing, including the initial currency policy, have been very, very helpful for Tinubu. Because, for one, making everybody so desperate, the populace, beating down the working class movement and the popular like segments of the economy to this extent helps the person who has the most money to move forward in the election. Because aside from the ethnic sympathy thing, the person who has the most cash has suddenly gained more power, given that now everybody has much less cash than they used to, and cash in particular. I'm not saying the election is necessarily bought and sold in explicit market terms, but you having the most cash still matters a lot for various reasons, including the logistics that Emeka was talking about, but also including like, giving people gifts, trying to communicate to people that you are the one who quote unquote cares for them. And then the other thing is that, so if the narrative supports has helped Tinubu quite a bit from the perspective of him now seeming like a victim, the material sort of balance of things still seems to tilt in his favor, based on this. So it's starting to seem to me like Buhari is like, okay, fine, I'll play the villain here as I bow out, and then you guys can share the spoils as long as you remember me, for quote unquote defending democracy. So yeah, I mean, again, maybe that's a far too red-pilled, far too conspiratorial way to see things. But it just strikes me that ultimately these guys, the thing that scares them the most is the possibility that Nigerians, the masses, will actually see the election as, something potentially empowering, and try to surge forward. And I think are much less afraid, of one or the other of them taking power. So it's just kind of like, oh, okay, let's put in our other striker in the fourth, in the fourth quarter of the second half to switch things up a bit, and maybe we'll win. But ultimately, we've already sold enough shirts. The stadium is full already. So whether the
we don't
team
make
wins or
money.
not, whether the team
don't-
wins or not, the managers are gonna laugh to the bank. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of my feeling on things.
Here's the thing for me, right? I mean, and I think you mentioned this, or it's something that you alluded to. It's for Bola Tinubu, right?
Yeah.
And I always say this for anybody who wants to become president. Most of them, it's not like they want to go there and they don't have a sense of history. They don't want to go down in history of having been maybe the best, or it's not. I don't think anybody goes there and says, "Oh, I want to go and show Nigerians, go and show them shiggy." So I think that somewhere deep in their hearts, they want to change things. The question is, in what direction do they, want to change things? I mean, what are their anticipations? How do they think about development? I mean, this is where I think we all have ideological differences, all right? So for me, Tinubu has amassed a lot of money, right? And he did that from Lagos State. I don't want to start going back and saying how he did it. Same for Atiku, right? And Obi has to do so. I mean, this all capitalists essentially. So money is not the motivating thing here, right? It's about power, okay? The divisions within their camps, it's also about power,
And
right?
status, right?
Yeah, status, okay? The guys, everybody pitches their tent where they think, it will benefit them in terms of what their long-term goals are, their ambitions, right? As far as the president is concerned, he has no, Rufai doesn't, someone like Rufai who speaks the centric path, sees he has no value for Rufai anymore, right? Person who has some value for Rufai as it stands today, and the likes of Ganduje, and the Tiamos of this world is Bats. That is why he's their presidential candidate. And they stood behind him from the primaries, all right? Same thing in PDP, but let's focus on the APC, the party in power. The way I see it, these guys, of course, it's not something that they're not going to settle tomorrow, right? But as it stands now, they need BAT in power.
Yeah.
That's what they need. That's where they need him. They don't want Atiku. So it's not a question of factions within APC jostling for power. No, it is Buhari. The way they see Buhari is, this guy is going. He's not bothered. He has signed some electoral laws that make it more difficult for us to rig elections
outrightly
this way. Yeah, this is how we have to rig elections, by buying votes, right? That's what he allows. Now, we don't stockpile cash we want to use by votes. This one can't come say we go change Naira, right? I think it was something you shared within the week or some time back, I don't know where I got that. If you look at the value of each denomination in circulation, you'll get a better idea where these guys are actually coming from. I mean, the value, I was shocked when I found out that the higher denomination notes, the 1000s, the 500s, the 200s, and, combined, they're in trillions of naira.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe like 2 trillion or 2 point something trillion out of 3 point something trillion naira that's.
And that makes sense now, because if you gather 5 naira notes plenty, you go constantly say it all amounts to 5,000. So
yeah,
compared to if you gather plenty of 1,000 naira notes.
Yeah, but you see, but yeah, I get that. But the lower denomination notes, I'm not sure. So if you gather all of them together, you reach 1 trillion, maybe
exactly.
like 500 billion,
exactly.
right?
Intuitively, that makes sense, is what I mean.
Now, I don't know if it does, but let's continue, because I have a totally different, idea about that. But that's not where I want the conversation. If you go to the ATM, what the ATM dispenses now the higher denomination notes. I don't know when last I go any ATM will give me 50 naira or 100 naira.
Not possible, sir.
Even the 200, sir, they even give me even the 200 when they talk about. Okay. So basically, and then when they even go to the banks to collect all these, they are big billions where they collect now the higher denominations. So now then they use, they store their money. So if they've stored up all of that money, and then you're now asking people to return all of that money, you see that they don't even have the finance, no matter how much they get. I'm struggling with the point that I'm trying to make here, but I think essentially what I'm saying, what I want to point out is that it is in their own interests. These guys who are in the thick of all of these things, people who are spinning this narrative today, to see that Bola Tinubu gets into office.
Yeah.
And the CBN policy, however you think about it, right, is in their way. Whether they have sorted themselves out in terms of the stockpiles of piled, massive 1,000, 2,500 notes that they are going to use to prosecute election on election day. It is also a question of how the electorate perceives that, which is why you see that they're constantly dissociating and distancing themselves from the policy.
Yeah.
And then armed with that, they have now decided to spin the narrative. Initially they were not going frontally against the president. In fact, they wanted to keep all the whole blame on MFLA. All right, but to be fair to someone like Ganduje, who I think has some balls, or maybe not as cunning as Rufai is, he has come out head on to go, to attack the president. And then they're now saying,
well, I think that has something to do with the fact that Buhari is less popular in Kano than Kaduna, where he lives. So,
that's a. In fact, if you ask me, Buhari is less popular in the north today than he was, 8 years ago,
definitely.
4 years.
Definitely.
Ago, but that's not to say that's in 12 million votes when they get 6 million no they there somewhere.
Sure. Yeah.
We no go answer.
You have to be careful about
we want disparage them.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it's a bit I mean they're walking a very tight rope. And how to navigate it is a bit of a problem for them, which makes analysis very, very difficult unless you have first-hand insider gist about just look at this whole nonsense about interim national government. That's why I say Rufai doesn't mind riots, he doesn't mind chaos. In fact, what he's trying to do is to cause some kind of chaos.
I agree.
Rufai goes and gives an interview on TV this night or this evening, right? And before 6 a.m. the next day, riot breaks out in Lagos. I'm not saying that riots haven't broken out in other cities before now, but it breaks out in Lagos in unique pockets within Lagos, in Mile 12, in K2, in Ojota, in Agege, in Okwoba, So when you say it's coordinated, I wouldn't blame anybody who comes out to say that riots in Lagos were coordinated after Rufai's broadcast, And then so, what was he hoping to achieve? Of course, he didn't break out in Kaduna, but he broke out in Lagos. So what does Rufai? What is he looking to achieve with trying to heat up the polity? As far as I'm concerned, many of them don't even want the elections to hold on Saturday. They want a situation where they have to postpone the election, so that they can then, because they have been sitting on their asses for a while, overconfident in the
we haven't heard from him for most of the election. Only now is he suddenly realize
he just wake up. Na idiot he be. Sorry, but na idiot.
No, I mean, so I don't want us to spend our whole time dwelling on inter-elite squabbles or coordination, but I mean, it just seems to me that, first of all, the general narrative, that has it that, there's a cabal and Rufai is now fighting against the cabal and Tinubu is a victim of a cabal, seems very suspect for too many reasons. So I just wanted to give us an opportunity to air out our perspectives on that issue, and raise our skepticism, where it's warranted. And even though we're not all necessarily on the same page, I think we all do, though, see this as ultimately engineered to maintain ruling class power, really, and keep us, the masses, either too confused, too impoverished and, weak, or, just kind of absorbed within one faction or the other to organize across our own class. So I think that's where to take the conversation next is, so I'm not going to ask you where is the left in all of this, because I think we already know the answer to that. But I think the question maybe is, where should the left be? I mean, in a moment where there is genuine dissatisfaction, and I think not just with the APC, but also with the PDP and Labour, who have not necessarily ridden to the defense of the masses of people who cannot access Naira anymore. PDP and Labour are saying people should be patient with the policy. It's a good idea. How can you be patient if you are starving, and have no food to eat? We are people who are living in mansions with access to Naira at will are telling you to be patient, or on the other hand, the APC, who's the one imposing this, suffering in the first place. How should the left intervene in a moment where there actually is a clear distinction emerging between the rulers who have the cash and the vast majority who doesn't have cash? Like ideally, what would the left do in a situation like this, that it isn't doing? How do you guys see it? Maybe OAG, you want to jump in?
Okay. So we have to start from what's really on ground. Now that the left is not as coherent, as organized, as present, as effective as we want it to be, what could be done now is, first and foremost, if they were on ground, what they could have done is, like I said earlier, it's a teachable moment. It's a time to point these things out to the people and help us deepen our knowledge of the characteristics of the elites, help us deepen our knowledge of how these guys move, help us deepen our understanding of what they will do or what they can do, and help us solidify, our consciousness and raise it as to how we too have to be strategic and not fall for all these things that they pull at when it's time for election, be it ethnic games or religious games and all that. But since we know even, no organization like that, no united front, no solid, it's like, from a place of spectating. So we just be like largely spectators. Though I don't want, again, I get biased for the AAC, I get biased for that. I don't want to just use my hand to sway. I'll just push them aside as if they are nothing. As if those parties are nothing. Like, of course, we must start to now look at how they can take this and use as educational points for people to see, which they've been doing to some extent, but they can sharpen that up, and let people know that, look, these guys really don't care about you. In the drop of a hat, they'll do policies that will mess you up. They'll hide in domain. They'll hide palliatives. They will mess you up, even, if you're informal sector, if you're formal sector, even the so-called middle class guys that is going to bank, go and do your work at any bank, this one bank, that one bank. You said we don't see hell within the past week now, where they won't burn your bank.
Banks are under attack. I mean, actually, OG, there might be. I might be able to phrase the question a little more directly. Like, if we did have a more vibrant left, would you expect them at this moment to encourage people to rebel? I mean, to encourage a kind of mass protest right now, or would you expect them to encourage people
to go and vote?
Yes, to wait patiently for the election, or is the answer somewhere between? Like, what would the actual left be doing right now?
So it depends on where the strength of the left, because the left should be able to self-analyze and say, okay, if we have this election thing on lock, then don't worry. At the polls, we'll show them, But if we have the organization part on lock, and we know that after the protest and this thing, we'll take the system down, and then we can reorganize the country how we want, then to be on the side of protest. But NSAS has told us and taught us that we are nowhere near that at all.
Yes. I'm pouring with no strategy. Too short, right?
Yeah, so the only thing we can just do is just educate people for those that want to hear, because even the receptive ears of people, they blocked. You would see when this guy was talking, like in the middle of the week or 2 weeks ago, about Sheon Kuti and P Square, when Sheon was kind of giving like some structural analysis, and people were just yarning dust. Like, people were just saying,
Are you sure Sheon was not yarning dust?
I knew America would say that.
What?
Don't worry, continue, brother. No,
so they call him weed smoker, they insult him papa, they insult the shrine. That's just someone is giving you fundamental structural analysis. Because you don't read, you don't do anything, you don't understand history, you don't understand where you are at this point in time. So I'm sure again that the so-called man with the white collar, the poor, like I always say, they don't already down. No. He that is down needs fear no fall. But that middle or lower middle class that's scrapping by for that daily bread will suffer beyond what he or she can imagine. Because I'm sure that price of goods, services, everything will mess them up. You can't go to your bank, your child can't go to school, you can't, like, they will be pulled into wanting and yearning for something fundamentally different. And I hope that they are not bamboozled into any of these elite games that, you know, they are playing and serving them another messiah, you know. So they should just be conscious. People be conscious of what's going on. Moneyed interest can't save you, you know. And again, that's people throwing stones at the bank, burning the bank. It's just, what will I say? It's a metaphor for attacking of capital to me. Like the institutions that represent them, because you know, don't fail us already. Everything at privatization school, no day food, no day water, no day road, no day upstate hospital, no day waiting on day, if no be misery. And people they vent. You know, so that's just for me. It hurts that the left is not as organized as I want, you know, that I like I want it to be. You know, but what we go do now, just to they keep on teaching, to they keep on explaining, to they keep on talking, you know, and trying to see if bridges can be formed so that you know, some sort of organization go there. And it's unfortunate that the Labour Party again, we're supposed to be the knight in shining armor, we go champion the cause of the people. Now, at least don't want to use for for games. So it puts us at a very bad position, really. You know. Yeah.
Megan.
Yeah.
And you know one comment, you in talk here.
Baba,
Why you
you
just
speak
talk
on like
here?
Ignorant
let's
until left. No, left don't sleep.
let's not kid ourselves. We've been I mean, having this conversation for the better part of a year or more. We're having this conversation, and each time we ask ourselves what left. I mean, I think it's basically now become a rhetorical question.
Yes, which is why I'm not asking. Which is why I'm not asking what the left as it currently stands should. But I'm asking in the ideal situation, you have the masses suddenly aware that banks are part of the problem. You have the masses suddenly aware that they are on their last 50 naira note or their last 100 card. I mean, see, me, I don't even get, and we are in a relatively privileged position relative to, I don't even get cash, zero, as in, I don't hold 50 card as a day. So, you know, so you can imagine that ordinary people, at least I have some in the account, but you can imagine that people are down to their last card right now. And then they are aware that all of the people running for president, all of the major leaders or elites look at, they are the ones with the cash. So we're now in a juncture where, materially speaking, there is a clear line of division. So in a world where there was also some kind of left organization and force, what would you expect them to do there? You know, as we try to wrap up, is the kind of question.
To be honest, I don't. I mean, I mean, I get where you're coming from, but I don't know. To be honest, if I'm being, you know, candid, and if I'm being really honest with my own self to start with, I don't know what the left can do here. Really, I mean, that the ship sailed, you know, some time back. But I mean, from the reality on the ground is that I think the left is left with two choices: to continue to delude itself, you know, or to go back and sit down and start from what they like to do best, which is talk. But talk and then reach a resolution as to what's actionable.
Yeah.
Right. If you look at the trajectory of the guys who are in the running for president, I mean, in the forefront of it today, you would realize that almost all of them started as state governors. As state governors who had just one state, at least both of them, right? For people who don't even know, Atiku goes back all the way to the days, right? Yes, and Atiku won. Yeah, Atiku was supposed to be the governor of Old Gongola. He won on the ticket of SDP, I think it was, or it was even PDP. I can't remember. Before he was handpicked to become vice president and had to relinquish that. So these guys actually started their own politics on a state level, and then OAG mentioned Shore and AAC, right? And each time there are reactions to Shore's ambition of becoming president, when people say he should go and press start from, and I hear people on the left kick against it.
Yeah.
And my people, where I come from, southeastern part of Nigeria, they say you have to count one before you count two. You don't just start to count 10. That's not where the number starts from. You have to own something and then show what you can do with that thing first. So if you're going to meet the Nigerian people, you're going to have to say, where the AAC, we won election in Osun State, right? This is what we did with Osun State in 8 years. If you get that's the language the people who you want to rule their votes listen, right? It's not for Shehu to go and sit down on Twitter on video himself, bare chested, shouting and talking down on people. That's not how to. I mean, you can't talk down on people who you want to win over, right? So no matter what he has to say, and he has nothing to say, to be honest, really, Shehu is not making sense even to me. So
we can come back and do
no matter what. No matter what he has to say, it's not. You don't do that. You don't achieve it by talking down on people. That's not even what his father would have done. Fela showed more tact. I've never watched an interview where Fela was mad, I mean visibly mad, talking about the Nigerian people and their choices. I've seen him visibly mad talking about their stuff.
Indio.
About the
people. You people are just here. The politicians go around in cars, man.
But he's talking about politics. But this one is not the anyway. It's now waiting the one day to make them they do it, because even Fela not even win anything politically. So I really don't know waiting.
The thing is, the thing about because
Shehu get left tendency. Everything we do stands or passes. No, me I don't agree. No. I mean, so and we're talking about the left here. So that's strategy. Also, what I also see people who support the AAC do, and then you go after people who have worked and gotten some kind of mileage, and then you're going after them, attacking their base. Really, it's not going to buy you anything. It's not going to do nothing. To be honest, that's why I stand with the left.
No, right. So the thing
you want to come back in? I mean, we have about 5 more minutes. So maybe
the thing I want to keep is how easy is it for you to get, if the so-called right guys and people that have been in power, they pick someone that has no experience, that's who they'll foist on you, and you're going to take it because it's their party. What experience have they had? So is that cultural domination is very, because I feel like the left in Nigeria, we don't they ambushed, we did defensive, especially the people that are still sticking to the principles, because the world around you, the sun that is shining in your sky, now one will be the oppressive sun. Like, so it is very easy for you to be irritated, especially, and I sure say, no be waiting in the column, no be the ordinary man, the guy they even bark at or shout at. Now people where they internet we get this thing, we get because if not, why ain't go do MOP? Why ain't go say, because instead if they attack the show red guy and say the other say na him be the main guy, na him be the one guy. No, so even if people for AAC come that, they go get them too, because nobody can come and be saying rubbish. She's telling you that, look, these people get fundamental differences, and you're yabbing me because I'm showing fundamental, like pointing out their fundamental differences. Let's organize. That's always been the message. Let's organize. It's the people. The key thing is the people of Nigeria that can save Nigeria. It's not AAC, it's not this, it's not that. It's someone that can, or a party that can be a conduit to the manifestations of what the people want. That's the thing. And it's unfortunate that the role of power can make them bring all this riffraff from MC Oluomo be governor tomorrow now. Which
in fact, I think will be governor himself, unless we do anything
he
about
don't try to be try to be king for Oshodi. He has
the
tried to
odds
be
of
king,
that
which
guy
the
not
experience
governing.
he gets for king.
Yeah.
Which experience he get for being royal, that kind of thing. So these elites, they can actually bring people from nowhere. We don't get one iota of experience or anything, and they go take them because they are associated culturally, psychologically. We don't embed and we don't digest them as part of the people we don't do something before. It speaks to the lack of freedom from elite domination where the people within Nigeria where they get. We are not free from these guys. If I go to see some people picture from younger parties. I go to listen for my mind. I go to look say, hey, you said what become governor. you never chop money where you have to be able to win yourself from the mind, as in from that person will be governor. They look, we need to imagine and reimagine something that is new, that is free from these guys. If not, now so they could just tell us, say, go start from this one, go start from that one, go start from this one. As in, so it's I just feel like something must give. Of course, we can't jump that part of organize. We must organize, form links with the people.
Yeah. No, you come.
That's
you
you see,
you go organize the election before you begin organize.
Now what's the guy they talk now?
Now me I they talk.
Yeah. Now what's the guy they talk? Organize without bases inside communities, without bases inside. We can't, because they say even if the guy enter and he become president, how you want to take down for local government, how you want to take down for state house of assembly, you can't. He said all these things.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of saying they just shut up people, but they're a pile of wolves that attack you. And then you said we can't they very defensive, they lash at that.
You said go they attack people now. You go they attack people. Now me I tell you.
Well, look.
Yeah. I just wish the left was more coherent, more organized, and then more would they come up with something concrete, even if it means a long-term strategy. And I say, okay, we don't get solid base for here. Let's go and show the people, because I believe in showing and proving. Show them, say, okay, when we do now like this, we do now money, now like this, we do this, and the the qualitative and quantitative development will happen to the people when we get power be this. Then that gives us more level. People, in all cultures in Nigeria, I believe people now show and prove. Nobody will believe they make just one talk. Yes, so no content talk.
Well, guys,
so no
we're about to be cut off by the Zoom chat. So I think it's probably a good. Yeah. So. Look, I think it's been a very interesting conversation, and it's clear that there's some level, even if there's some superficial disagreements at the elite level, there's quite a bit of coordination. So I hope that we on the left too, despite our own superficial disagreements, can come to a point where we can coordinate ourselves, and as you guys have organized. But it looks like it won't be this election, unfortunately.
No.
Anyway, I beg, make person transfer me 10K. I beg, make I see if I go stand for ATM, come out at least 5 this afternoon before.
Don't worry, I get 5K for house. Come collect that.
We need that.